The crystalline halls of the Nexus station gleamed under artificial starlight as Captain Zara Velthar adjusted her environmental suit for the 100th time. Her forearms moved with nervous precision, checking seals and readouts that she already knew were perfect. The other members of the Galactic Council's delegation committee stood at various distances, their own species-specific anxieties manifesting in different ways. First contact protocol initialized, announced the station's AI in 17 languages simultaneously. Human vessel approaching docking bay 7. Zara's secondary hearts began their rapid percussion. After 3 cycles of preparation, countless simulations, and enough bureaucratic meetings to drive any sentient being mad, the moment had finally arrived. Humanity had accepted their invitation to join the Galactic Council as observer members. The irony wasn't lost on her. The galaxy's most feared species, the ones whose reputation preceded them by parsecs, were about to dock at their station. And she, a relatively young Zentari commander with no previous first contact experience, had been chosen to lead their integration. "Commander Velthar?" squeaked Pip, the Morvac assigned as her assistant. His gelatinous form quivered more than usual. "The human ship. It's not like the specifications they sent." Zara moved to the observation window, her tall, lithe form casting shadows across the polished floor. What she saw made her primary eyes widen. The human vessel wasn't the sleek, aggressive warship that everyone had expected. Instead, it looked worn, patched. Like someone had taken 3 different ships and welded them together with more enthusiasm than skill. "Scanners indicate weapon systems," reported Lieutenant Krex, his reptilian features twisted in confusion. "But they're disabled? No, wait. They've been converted into hydroponics bays?" The docking procedure continued with surprising smoothness. For a ship that looked like it had been through several wars and a particularly nasty asteroid field, it maneuvered with unexpected grace. Zara found herself leaning forward, fascinated despite her nervousness. "Remember," she addressed her team, forcing authority into her voice, "humans are new to galactic civilization. They've had no contact with other species until now. We must be patient, understanding, and above all, we must not show fear." Privately, she recited the facts that had kept her up for cycles. Humans came from a death world. They could survive injuries that would kill most species instantly. They bonded with anything, including their own predators. They had something called adrenaline that turned them into unstoppable forces when threatened. And most terrifying of all, they seemed to find dangerous situations entertaining. The airlock hissed open. Zara straightened, all 4 hands clasped in the formal greeting position. Her team arranged themselves behind her in order of rank and species compatibility. The moment stretched like taffy in a gravity well. The first human appeared, and Zara's carefully prepared speech died in her throat. He was small. Well, average height for a human according to the files, but somehow she'd expected something more imposing. Brown skin that looked impossibly fragile compared to her own chitinous exterior, hair the color of deep space cropped short, and his face. He was smiling. Not the baring of teeth that indicated aggression in most species, but something that seemed genuinely warm. "Hello," the human said, and his voice carried notes that the translator struggled with. "I'm Commander Marcus Chen. I really hope I'm pronouncing this right. Commander Velthar?" Zara found her voice. "Yes? Welcome to Nexus Station, Commander Chen. We are honored by your presence." Marcus stepped fully into the station, and she noticed he moved carefully, as if afraid of breaking something. Behind him, 4 other humans emerged, each looking around with expressions of wonder that seemed almost childlike. "The honor's all ours," Marcus said. "I have to admit, we're all a bit nervous. You're our first aliens. Well, First, peaceful aliens. We had that thing with the Skrell, but that doesn't really count since they tried to eat our colony. Zara's translator hiccuped on the casual mention of the Skrell incident. An entire raiding fleet, destroyed by a single human colony with improvised weapons. She pushed the thought aside. "If you'll follow me, we've prepared quarters for your delegation," she said, gesturing with her upper arms while her lower ones remained in the formal position. "I'm sure you'd like to rest after your journey." "Actually," Marcus said, reaching into a container one of his companions carried, "we brought gifts. Is that appropriate? We weren't sure about the protocol." He produced a sealed container that, when opened, released an aroma that made several of the delegation step back. Zara's olfactory organs identified complex hydrocarbons, sugars, and something else entirely. "They're called cookies," Marcus explained, apparently misreading their reaction as interest rather than alarm. "Chocolate chip. My grandmother's recipe. We thought, well, humans share food as a sign of friendship. But if your species can't process these ingredients—" "You brought food?" Pip squeaked, his form brightening. "The humans brought food as a peace offering? Is that wrong?" One of the other humans, a female with pale skin and red hair, looked concerned. "We studied all the files you sent, but they didn't mention dietary customs. We have other options if—" "No," Zara interrupted, surprising herself. "It's unexpected, but appreciated. My species can process most carbon-based organic compounds. Perhaps we could share them?" The smile that spread across Marcus's face could have powered a small station. "Really? That's fantastic. Sarah here was worried you'd be offended. She spent weeks researching galactic chemistry to make sure we didn't accidentally poison anyone." As they walked through the station, Zara found herself continually reassessing. The humans asked questions about everything, not the probing, strategic questions of a species planning invasion, but genuine curiosity. They wanted to know how the gravity plating worked, whether the plants in the botanical section were edible, if the different colored lights had meanings or were just aesthetic choices. "Your ship?" Krex finally asked, unable to contain his curiosity. "It appears to have seen significant combat." Marcus laughed, a sound that the translator rendered as pure amusement without threat. "The persistence? She's gotten us through some scrapes, that's for sure, mostly with asteroids and pirates. A few misunderstandings with species who shot first and asked questions later. But she keeps flying. Humans are good at making things work past their expiration date." They reached the designated quarters, a suite designed to accommodate various atmospheric and gravitational needs. The humans examined everything with those same expressions of wonder, occasionally making sounds the translator marked as appreciation. "This is incredible," the one called Sarah breathed. "The atmospheric controls alone. Do you realize what this means for terraforming applications?" "You're interested in terraforming?" Zara asked, trying to keep the alarm out of her voice. Humans transforming worlds was a nightmare scenario in many Council species threat assessments. "Failed colonies," Marcus explained, his expression shifting to something more serious. "We've got 3 worlds where the colonists are hanging on by threads. If we could adapt this technology, maybe we could finally give them stable environments." Zara filed this information away. Humans using advanced technology to save their own people rather than expand aggressively. It didn't fit the profiles at all. As the day progressed, more inconsistencies piled up. The humans were fascinated by the medical bay, but primarily asked about treating chronic conditions rather than battle injuries. They showed intense interest in the agricultural sectors, but focused on sustainable farming rather than rapid exploitation. When shown the defense systems, they seemed more impressed by the power distribution efficiency than the weapons themselves. During the evening meal, where the humans cheerfully ate nutrient paste while somehow making it seem appetizing through their enthusiasm, Marcus told stories. Not the tales of conquest and violence that the council had expected, but stories of human stupidity that had somehow worked out. "So there we were," he said, gesturing with his eating utensil, "stuck in an asteroid field with a damaged navigation system. And Jenkins, he's not here. Someone had to stay with the ship. Jenkins says, 'I saw this in a movie once,' and starts calculating trajectories using the rhythm of music. Specifically, ancient Earth music called dubstep. I still don't understand the math, but it worked." "You navigated an asteroid field using music?" Pip asked, his form practically glowing with excitement. "Music math," corrected another human, a quiet man named David. "The beat patterns created a predictable algorithm that could be matched to the asteroid rotation patterns. It was actually quite elegant." "It was insane," Sarah laughed. "But that's humans for you. We try the impossible because nobody told us it couldn't be done." As the evening wore on, Zara found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't expected. The humans were dangerous, yes. Their casualty reports and military history proved that beyond doubt. But they were dangerous in the way a plasma torch was dangerous, devastating when misused, but invaluable as a tool. "Commander Chen," she said as the gathering wound down, "tomorrow we begin the formal integration sessions. The Council has concerns about humanity's inclusion." Marcus nodded, his expression serious. "About our reputation, we know." The Skrill made sure everyone heard their version of events before they disappeared into uncharted space. "Yet you still came?" "Of course we did." He smiled again, smaller this time, but somehow more genuine. "You're our first peaceful contact with alien life. Do you know what that means to us? We grew up on stories of meeting other species, of joining some kind of galactic community. The reality that most species shot at us first was disappointing." "And if the Council rejects your membership?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering. "Then we'll thank you for the opportunity and go back to our corner of space. But we'll keep the door open. Humans are stubborn that way. We don't give up on the possibility of friendship." Later, after the humans had retired to their quarters, Zara found herself in the observation lounge with her team. The discussion was more animated than any post-contact briefing she'd seen in the archives. "They're nothing like the reports," Pip insisted, his color shifting through excited spectrums. "Did you see how they shared their food? No species does that on first contact." "Perhaps that's the point," Kreck suggested, though his tone lacked its usual suspicion. "A deception to lower our guard. A deception where they reveal their ship's vulnerabilities, admit to using music for navigation, and spend an hour discussing the optimal growing conditions for something called tomatoes," Zara countered. "If it's an act, it's an elaborate one." She thought about Marcus's face when he'd talked about failed colonies, the genuine pain when he'd mentioned the species that had attacked them without provocation, the joy when she'd accepted their food offering. "I've decided," she announced. "We proceed with full integration protocols. No restrictions beyond standard safety measures." "Commander," Krex protested, "the Council's guidelines clearly state—" "The guidelines assume hostile intent. I've seen no evidence of that. What I've seen is a species that weaponized music to save themselves, that turns weapons into gardens, that brings baked goods to first contact meetings. If that's not worth taking a chance on, what is?" As her team dispersed, still debating, Zara remained at the observation window. The human ship hung in space, ugly and patched and somehow beautiful in its determination to keep flying. Not unlike the humans themselves. Tomorrow would bring challenges. The Council would test the humans, push them to see if the dangerous reputation was deserved. They would probe for weaknesses, look for signs of the violence that had made their name feared across known space. But tonight, Zara had hope. Because she'd seen something in Marcus Chen's eyes when he'd spoken of friendship, of keeping doors open despite disappointment. It was the same look she'd seen in the mirror when she'd first dreamed of bringing species together in peace. The humans were dangerous, yes. But perhaps they were dangerous in the way hope was dangerous, capable of changing everything if you were brave enough to embrace it. As she headed to her quarters, Zara made a mental note to try one of those cookies tomorrow. After all, if she was going to trust a human to lead, gently or otherwise, she might as well start with trusting their grandmother's recipe. The integration sessions would determine humanity's fate in the galactic community. But somehow, after today, Zara suspected the galaxy might need the humans more than anyone had realized. They brought something beyond military might or technological advancement. They brought the audacity to try the impossible, simply because no one had told them it couldn't be done. And in a galaxy grown stagnant with centuries of established protocol, that might be the most valuable gift of all. The council chamber of Nexus Station was designed to intimidate. Sweeping curves of metal and energy fields created a space that could accommodate beings from 100 different worlds while simultaneously making each feel small before the collective authority of galactic civilization. Zara had been in this chamber dozens of times, but never from the position she occupied now, standing beside the human delegation as their appointed advocate. Marcus Chen stood with his team in the designated circle, looking remarkably calm for someone facing judgment from representatives of 73 different species. His companions showed various degrees of nervousness, but none of the aggression the council had prepared for. Sarah, the red-haired scientist, was actually taking notes on a small device, apparently fascinated by the chamber's architecture. "The council recognizes the human delegation," announced Councillor Thexneal, his crystalline form resonating with harmonic authority. "You stand before us seeking observer status within the Galactic Council. Given your species' reputation for violence and unpredictability, you understand why this body requires extraordinary proof of your peaceful intentions." Marcus stepped forward, and Zara noticed he'd learned the proper formal stance overnight. Humans adapted quickly, it seemed. "We understand completely, Counselor," Marcus replied. "We're prepared to answer any questions and undergo any tests you deem necessary." "Then we shall begin." Thexneal's harmonics shifted to what Zara recognized as anticipation. "Counselor Barktan will present the first scenario." The Rillan counselor rose on 4 legs, his predatory features causing Sarah to take an involuntary step back before catching herself. Zara couldn't blame her. Rillans were descended from pack hunters and still looked the part. "Humans," Barktan began, his voice a low growl that needed no translation to convey menace. "You destroyed a full Skrell raiding fleet with a colony of barely 3,000 individuals. Explain how this demonstrates peaceful intentions." Marcus didn't hesitate. "The Skrell attacked our colony without warning. They killed 43 people, including children, before we could mount a defense. We tried to communicate, to ask why they were attacking, but they responded only with weapons fire." "So you annihilated them," Barktan pressed. "Every ship. No survivors." "No," David, the quiet human, spoke up. "We disabled their engines and weapons. We gave them the option to surrender. They chose to self-destruct rather than be captured. We have the recordings if you'd like to verify." A ripple went through the chamber. The official Skrell report had claimed the humans destroyed them without mercy. This was different. "You claim you tried to show mercy to raiders actively killing your people?" Another counselor, a serpentine EST, showed skepticism in every movement. Sarah pulled out her device, projecting holographic data into the chamber. "Colony defense log, timestamp included. You can see here where we targeted specific systems. A kill shot would have gone here." She indicated a point on the Skrell ship schematic. "We hit here instead, disabling but not destroying. It took more precision, more risk to our people, but we did it anyway." "Why?" The question came from multiple counselors simultaneously. Marcus's expression grew sad. "Because 43 deaths were already too many. We didn't want to add to that number if we could avoid it. The Skrell made their choice. We gave them every opportunity to make a different one. Counselor Thexneel's form flickered. Surprise, Zara thought. You risked your colony to offer mercy to those actively trying to kill you? Wouldn't you? Marcus asked, and the simple question seemed to echo in the chamber. If you had the strength to show mercy, wouldn't you use it? Power without restraint isn't strength, it's just violence. The examination continued for hours. The council presented scenario after scenario, each designed to reveal humanity's supposed tendency toward violence. A mining dispute that humans had resolved through negotiation despite having superior firepower. A pirate attack where humans had rescued the pirates' prisoners before engaging. A terraforming project abandoned when they discovered microbial life on the target world. Each time, the humans provided documentation, recordings, evidence that contradicted the reputation that had preceded them. And each time, Zara watched the council's certainty erode a little more. Your ship, Counselor Barktan returned to the attack. It bears weapons. Converted to hydroponics bays, Marcus reminded him. We kept the mounting points in case we need to convert them back, but right now they're growing food for colonies that need it. You could convert them back to weapons quickly. Yes, Marcus agreed without hesitation. Just like every tool can become a weapon if needed. A mining laser can destroy a ship. A medical scanner can be overloaded to cause neural damage. The question isn't whether something can be used as a weapon, but whether you choose to use it that way. And if we deny your application? This from a counselor who hadn't spoken yet, whose species Zara didn't recognize. If we decide humanity is too dangerous to join the galactic community? The humans exchanged glances. It was Sarah who answered. Then we'll go home. We'll continue developing on our own, helping our colonies, exploring our little corner of space. And maybe in a few decades or centuries when you're ready, we'll apply again. You wouldn't try to force your way in? Take what you want through violence? Marcus actually laughed. What would be the point? Forcing our way into a community that doesn't want us? That's not joining a community, that's invasion. We've had enough of being alone. We don't want to conquer the galaxy, we want to be part of it. A recess was called. Zara found herself in a side chamber with the human delegation, who had finally started showing signs of stress. Marcus was pacing, Sarah was obsessively reviewing her data, and David sat perfectly still in what Zara was beginning to recognize as a human coping mechanism. How do you think it's going? Marcus asked her. Better than expected, Zara admitted. The council came prepared to reject a warlike species. Instead, they're finding something else entirely. Yeah. But what? Sarah burst out. We're not perfect. We've made mistakes, had wars, done terrible things to each other and to other species when they attacked first. How do we explain that we're trying to be better? That we want to be better? Zara considered this. In her preparation, she'd studied human history extensively. The wars, the violence, the capacity for destruction, but also the rebuilding, the peace treaties, the moments when they'd chosen cooperation over conflict. Perhaps that's exactly what you should tell them, she suggested. The council respects perfection, but they understand growth. When the session resumed, Counselor Thexanil presented what Zara recognized as the final test. We have reviewed your history, humans, the wars among your own kind, the destruction of your birth world's environment, the violence that seems endemic to your species. How can we trust you won't bring this to the galactic community? Marcus stood silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that the translator struggled to convey. You're right. We've done terrible things. We've killed each other over resources, ideology, simple fear of difference. We poisoned our world so badly it took centuries to repair. We carry the weight of every mistake, every war, every moment we chose violence over peace. He paused, looking at each counselor in turn. But we also carry the memory of what violence costs. Every human grows up learning about the wars, the mistakes, the price of choosing force over diplomacy. We teach our children about the cities that burned and the species we'll never meet because we reacted with fear instead of curiosity. Sarah stepped forward. You ask how you can trust us? You can't. Trust is earned, not demanded. All we can do is show you who we're trying to be. Every day we make the choice to be better than we were. Sometimes we fail, but we keep trying. Because that's what humans do, David added quietly. We fall down. We get up. We try again. We learn from our mistakes. And maybe that makes us more dangerous than a species that's never known conflict. We know exactly what we're capable of, and we choose to be better anyway. The chamber fell silent. Zara watched the counselors' reactions, some skeptical, some thoughtful, some showing signs of reassessment. Barktan leaned forward. You admit to being capable of great violence. Yes, Marcus said simply. You admit to having a history of destruction. Yes. And yet you ask us to trust you. No. Marcus shook his head. We ask you to give us the chance to earn your trust. Observer status. No voting rights, no access to restricted technology, no influence on council decisions. Just the chance to prove through actions, not words, that we want to be part of something greater than ourselves. The silence stretched. Then, from the back of the chamber, came a sound Zara had never heard in a council session. Slow, rhythmic impacts. She turned to see a Morvac counselor, one of Pip's species, slapping appendages together in what she realized was applause. Others joined, not all, but enough to create a sound that filled the chamber. Thexneal called for order. The council will deliberate. You will have our decision within one cycle. As they left the chamber, Zara noticed something had changed in how other species looked at the humans. Less fear, more curiosity. In the corridors, beings who had previously avoided the human delegation now nodded acknowledgments or showed species-specific gestures of interest. That was intense, Sarah breathed once they were back in their quarters. I thought for sure Barktan was going to challenge Marcus to single combat or something. He considered it, Zara informed them. It's a traditional way to test a species representative, but I think your words made him reconsider. Our words? Marcus seemed surprised. I thought we bungled that completely, admitting to all our flaws. You showed wisdom, Zara said. A species that acknowledges its capacity for violence but chooses peace is more trustworthy than one that claims perfection. The waiting period was hard on everyone. The humans dealt with it in characteristic fashion. They cooked. Somehow, they'd managed to convert a small section of their quarters into a makeshift kitchen and were producing foods from various Earth cultures. The smells drew curious visitors from other delegations. It's called stress baking, Sarah explained to a fascinated group of Yistke engineers. Humans often process anxiety through creative activities. Would you like to try some? This one's safe for your biology. Watching the serpentine beings cautiously taste human pastries, while Sarah explained the chemical reactions involved in baking, Zara found herself smiling. This was not how first contact scenarios typically played out. Marcus found her on the observation deck as the cycle neared its end. Earth's sun was visible in the distance, a small point of light among millions. Thank you, he said simply, for taking a chance on us, for seeing past the reputation. I saw a species bringing cookies to a first contact, Zara replied. It was difficult to maintain fear after that. He laughed. Sarah's idea. She said if we were going to be judged, we might as well be judged for who we really are. Dangerous cookies and all. Dangerous cookies? Well, the chocolate could have been toxic to some species, but she researched it thoroughly first. That's humans for you. We'll risk everything on a gesture of friendship, but we'll research it first to make sure we don't accidentally poison anyone. The soft chime indicated the council had reached a decision. As they made their way back to the chamber, Zara noticed the human delegation walking differently, not with the careful steps of those afraid to give offense, but with quiet confidence. Whatever the decision, they'd shown their true selves. The chamber was full, more full than Zara had ever seen it. Representatives from species across the galaxy had come to witness this moment. Thexneel's crystalline form seemed to pulse with the weight of announcement. "The Council has deliberated," he began. "The question of humanity's admission as observer members has provoked more debate than any application in recent memory. You are a paradox, a species capable of terrible violence that chooses peace, a race that weaponizes music and turns weapons into gardens." He paused, and Zara felt the tension in the room like a physical thing. "It is the determination of this council that such a paradox is exactly what our community needs. Your application for observer status is approved with the following condition. Commander Zara Velthar will continue as your liaison to help guide your integration and ensure mutual understanding." The chamber erupted, not in the formal acknowledgement typical of council decisions, but in something more organic. Cheers, clicks, harmonics, and other species-specific expressions of approval filled the space. The humans stood stunned for a moment, then Marcus turned to his team with a grin that could have powered a small moon. "We did it," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We actually did it." As the formal procedures concluded and delegations began to disperse, Zara found herself surrounded by the human team. Marcus extended his hand. She'd learned this was a greeting gesture, and she carefully shook it with one of her primary hands. "So," he said, "ready to help humanity find its place in the galaxy?" Zara thought about everything she'd witnessed, the contradictions, the surprises, the potential. "I believe the question is whether the galaxy is ready for humanity." "Only one way to find out," David said with a rare smile. As they left the chamber together, Zara overheard two counselors discussing the decision. "Mark my words," one said. "This will change everything." Looking at the humans already making friends with other delegations, sharing food and stories and laughter, Zara knew the counselor was right. But for the first time in cycles, change didn't seem like something to fear. It seemed like something to embrace. The humans were here, with all their contradictions and complications. They brought their dangerous hope, their stubborn refusal to give up, their grandmother's recipes and their converted weapons. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The integration had only just begun, but already Zara could see the ripples spreading. Questions being asked, assumptions being challenged, connections being made across species lines that had never interacted before. Humanity's greatest weapon, it turned out, wasn't their adrenaline or their persistence or even their ability to pack bond with anything. It was their simple, revolutionary idea that strangers were just friends you hadn't met yet. And in a galaxy that had forgotten how to hope for something better, that might be the most powerful force of all. 6 months into humanity's observer status, Zara found herself racing through the corridors of Nexus Station with an urgency she'd never felt before. The emergency beacon from the Outer Rim had been specific. A colony ship carrying 10,000 beings from various council species had suffered catastrophic system failure near the Void Sector. They were beyond the range of any council rescue vessels, except for one. She burst into the human quarters to find Marcus and his team already suited up, studying holographic displays of the distress zone. The worn patches on their ship suddenly made sense in a way they hadn't before. These humans had done this kind of thing before. "How did you already know?" she gasped, her breathing organs working overtime. "We monitor all emergency frequencies," Sarah replied without looking up from her calculations. "It's a human thing. How fast can the Council give us clearance to—" "The Council is in emergency session," Zara interrupted. They're debating whether to risk human involvement in a rescue operation. Some members think this could be a test of your true nature. Marcus turned from the display, and Zara saw something in his eyes she'd only read about in the classified reports, the look humans got when lives were at stake. "How long do they have?" he asked quietly. 12 hours before life support fails. 15 before the ship drifts into the gravitational anomaly. And the debate? Could take 6 hours to reach a conclusion. Marcus exchanged glances with his team. A conversation without words, decisions made in heartbeats. "Then we're going without clearance. Zara, you can report that we stole a shuttle if you need to maintain—" "I'm coming with you," she heard herself say. "As your liaison, where you go, I go." 20 minutes later, Zara found herself aboard the Persistence, watching the human crew transform from diplomats into something else entirely. The casual friendliness was still there, but overlaid with an efficiency that was almost frightening. Every movement had purpose. Every word was precise. "Jenkins, plot a course through the maelstrom," Marcus commanded. "Sarah, I need those shield modifications we discussed. David, prep the medical bay for multiple species trauma. We're going to be pushing the envelope on this one." Zara watched the view screen as they departed, Nexus Station shrinking rapidly behind them. "The maelstrom? That's a level 5 navigational hazard. No ship has successfully—" "First time for everything," Jenkins called out cheerfully. He was exactly what Zara had expected from Marcus's stories, chaotic energy barely contained in human form. "Music math worked for asteroids. Let's see what death metal does for gravitational shears." "You're going to navigate a level 5 hazard using music?" Zara couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "Technically using mathematical patterns found in musical structures to create predictive algorithms for chaotic systems," David explained while pulling medical supplies from storage. "It shouldn't work, but humans are very good at making things work that shouldn't." The ship lurched as they entered the maelstrom's outer edge. Zara's 4 hands found grip points as gravity shifted in ways that made her stomach organs consider rebellion. Through it all, Jenkins's music, if the aggressive noise could be called that, pounded through the ship. "There!" he shouted over a particularly violent crescendo. "You feel that? The bass drop matches the gravity pulse. We can ride it like a wave." Zara wanted to point out the insanity of this plan, but the ship was moving. Not just moving, dancing through gravitational currents that should have torn them apart. The Persistence groaned and protested, but she flew. "How long to the colony ship?" Marcus asked, his calm voice a counterpoint to the chaos. 4 hours at this rate, Sarah reported. "But Marcus, the power drain. Will the ship hold together?" "She'll hold," Sarah said with a confidence that Zara didn't understand. "She always does." They burst from the maelstrom like a cork from a bottle, sensors immediately locking onto the colony ship. It was worse than the report suggested. The massive vessel listed helplessly, lights flickering as power systems failed one by one. "Life signs?" Marcus demanded. 10,342, David reported. "But they're packed into emergency shelters. System failures across the board. They've got maybe 8 hours, not 12. "Comm channel open," another crew member reported. "They're responding." The main screen filled with the image of a Rillan captain, her predator features drawn with stress. Behind her, Zara could see representatives of a dozen species in various states of panic. "This is Captain Velnara of the colony ship Hope's Journey, who—" Her eyes widened as she registered what she was seeing. "Humans? The Council sent humans?" "The Council's still debating," Marcus replied. "We came anyway. Captain, we need a full damage report and access to your systems. We're going to get you out of there." For a moment, Velnara just stared. Then, "Our main reactor is down. Navigation is offline. Half our escape pods were damaged in the initial event. Even if you could dock, we have no way to evacuate everyone before—" "Captain," Marcus interrupted gently, "we're humans. We do impossible things. Now, are you going to let us help?" The next hours passed in a blur. Zara watched the human crew work with an intensity that bordered on frightening. They docked with the colony ship despite its tumbling motion. Jenkins actually laughed during the most dangerous part. Sarah and her engineering team swarmed through the damaged systems, not trying to repair them, but reimagining them entirely. "We can't fix your reactor," Sarah reported to the stunned Rillan engineers, "but we can daisy-chain every small power source on the ship. Personal devices, emergency batteries, even the bioluminescent emergency lighting. It won't be pretty, but it'll give us thrust." That's not how power systems work," one of the engineers protested. "It is now," Sarah grinned. "Trust the humans who navigate with music." David worked with the medical teams, setting up triage stations with an efficiency that made even the veteran council medics stare. He moved between species without hesitation, somehow knowing exactly what each needed. "How do you know YIST pressure points?" a Serpentine medic asked in amazement. "I studied," David replied simply. "Couldn't help people if I didn't understand them." But it was Marcus who truly showed what humans were capable of. He coordinated the impossible evacuation with a calm that spread through both crews like a stabilizing field. When panic threatened to break out among the refugees, he was there with exactly the right words. When systems failed, he found solutions no one else would have considered. "We're using the waste processing system to boost thrust?" Velnara asked, beyond amazement at this point. "Methane is methane," Marcus shrugged. "Your species planned for everything to work perfectly. Humans plan for everything to fail, and then figure out how to use the pieces." Zara found herself in the thick of it, translating not just languages, but concepts. She helped Sarah explain to horrified engineers why they were routing life support through the food preparation systems. She assisted David in calming a group of young Morvacs who were terrified of the human medical equipment. She stood beside Marcus as he made decision after decision, each one seemingly impossible, but somehow working. "Why?" she asked him during a brief moment of calm. "Why risk everything for strangers?" He looked at her with genuine surprise. "They're not strangers. They're people who need help. That makes them ours." "Ours?" "Human thing," he said with a tired smile. "We adopt everything. Speaking of which, you're doing amazing. Sure you're not secretly human?" Before she could respond, alarms shrieked through both ships. The gravitational anomaly was expanding faster than predicted. They had minutes, not hours. "Everyone's aboard except the engineering teams," Sarah's voice crackled over comms. "But Marcus, if we try to run now, we won't clear the gravity well. Not with this mass." "Options? I have one." Sarah's voice was strange, calm in a way that set off every warning instinct Zara had. "But you're not going to like it." On the screen, Sarah stood in the colony ship's engine room, her hands on a console that flickered with dying power. "I can overload what's left of their reactor, create a pulse that pushes you clear. But someone has to stay to manage it manually." "No," Marcus said immediately. "We don't leave people behind." "You don't have a choice," Sarah said gently. 10,000 lives, Marcus. The math is simple." "Math is never simple," Jenkins interjected. "Sarah, get your ass back here. I've got a better idea." His fingers flew over his console, music shifting from death metal to something Zara couldn't identify. Complex, layered, beautiful in its chaos. "What are you doing?" Velnara demanded. "Weaponizing dubstep," Jenkins grinned maniacally. "If we match the resonance frequency of the anomaly, we can use it. Surf the gravity wave out instead of fighting it." "That's insane," Sarah breathed. Then, "That's completely insane. It might work." "Might?" Zara asked. "Definitely," Marcus said with iron certainty. "Sarah, get back here. Jenkins, show the universe what human music can do." What followed was the longest 10 minutes of Zara's life. The Persistence, carrying the mass of 2 ships' worth of refugees, dove toward the gravitational anomaly. Jenkins's music pounded through the hull, each beat precisely timed to match the pulses of twisted space-time. Sarah's jury-rigged power system screamed protests. David moved through the packed corridors, keeping panic at bay with calm words and gentle touches. And Marcus stood at the center of it all, conducting an orchestra of chaos with quiet commands and absolute faith in his people. They hit the anomaly's edge, and reality went sideways. Zara felt her consciousness scatter across dimensions, held together only by the relentless beat of human music and human will. The ship shouldn't have survived. The physics were impossible. The plan was madness, but they flew. They burst from the anomaly like ancient gods being born, trailing streams of twisted space-time. The colony ship's hull peeled away like old skin, but the refugees were safe in the Persistence's hold. Warning lights covered every console, but they were alive. "Distance from anomaly?" Marcus asked, voice steady despite the blood running from his nose, some human reaction to the stress. "Safe," Sarah reported, then laughed. "We're safe. We actually did it." The comm system exploded with voices from Nexus Station. The Council, having finally reached a decision to send a rescue mission, was demanding explanations. The media channels were flooding with footage of the Persistence's impossible flight. And somewhere in the chaos, Zara heard Counselor Thexaniel's harmonics expressing something she'd never heard from him before: awe. In the packed cargo hold, 10,000 beings from across the galaxy were slowly realizing they were alive. A Rillan child had attached itself to David's leg. Morvac engineers were pestering Sarah with questions, and Marcus stood among them all, dirty, exhausted, and smiling like the sunrise. "You saved us." Captain Velnara approached, her predator features soft, with an emotion Zara couldn't name. "The Council said humans were dangerous. They were right. You're dangerously compassionate." "We just did what anyone would do," Marcus replied. "No," Velnara shook her head. "No one else would have come. No one else would have tried the impossible. Only humans." As they limped back to Nexus Station, Zara watched the human crew. They were already planning repairs, discussing improvements, arguing about whether death metal or dubstep deserved credit for their survival. Normal human chaos, as if they hadn't just violated several laws of physics to save strangers. "You realize what you've done?" she asked Marcus. "The entire galaxy will know about this by tomorrow. Every species will be talking about the humans who dove into hell for people they'd never met." "Is that bad?" "No," Zara said slowly. "That's wonderful. You've shown them what I saw from the beginning. That human dangerous isn't about destruction. It's about determination. You don't give up. Not on problems, not on possibilities, and especially not on people." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You trusted us from the start. Why?" Zara thought about it. About cookies at first contact and stories of navigating by music, about humans who converted weapons to gardens and chose mercy over easy victory, about a species that looked at the impossible and said, "Let's try." "Because you're my first human," she said finally, "and you taught me that sometimes trust isn't about being safe. It's about believing in what someone could become if you give them the chance." The docking at Nexus Station was unlike anything in recorded history. Every available viewing port was crowded with beings wanting to see the battered human ship that had done the impossible. The Council was in emergency session, not to debate punishment, but to fast-track humanity to full membership. The media was calling it the miracle of the maelstrom. But in the quiet of the human quarters, as Sarah worked on repairs and David treated minor injuries, and Jenkins composed what he called a gravity symphony, Zara saw the truth of humanity. They hadn't done it for glory or recognition. They'd done it because people needed help, and they could help. "So," Marcus said as they watched the coverage of their rescue, "ready for whatever's next?" Zara looked at the humans who had become her family in all but blood. At the galaxy outside, forever changed by their example. At the future stretching before them, full of possibilities that hadn't existed before a worn human ship had docked at Nexus Station. With humans? She laughed. I don't think anyone's ever ready for what's next with humans, but I'm willing to find out. 6 months ago, she'd been afraid of humanity's reputation for violence. Now she understood the truth. Humans were dangerous, dangerously kind, dangerously determined, dangerously willing to risk everything for the possibility of saving someone. They brought chaos and hope in equal measure, turned impossibility into innovation, and somehow made the entire galaxy a little brighter just by being themselves. And as the celebrations began and the story of humanity's rescue spread across the stars, Zara knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never be the same. The humans were here, with their music navigation and jury-rigged miracles and stubborn refusal to accept that anything was impossible. They'd proven themselves not through conquest or technology, but through the simple act of caring more about saving lives than playing it safe. The integration was complete, but the adventure was just beginning. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other species were looking at their own impossible problems and thinking for the first time, what would the humans do? The answer Zara knew would always be the same. Whatever it took. Because that's what humans did. They tried the impossible, trusted the improbable, and somehow, against all odds and logic and reason, they made it work. And in a galaxy that had forgotten how to dream big, that was the most dangerous and wonderful quality of all.